Welcome to the Growing in Grace podcast. Glad to have Sister Karina Boyd, the mother of 4.
Yes.
Husband of Deacon Irvin Boyd Jr.
Yes.
Glad to have you here with us today. You are the mother of athletes.
Yes.
In fact, 2 girl athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
That's right.
And your sons athletes as well?
They were. They were.
You were an athlete?
Yes.
And your husband was an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So just a family of athletes.
Absolutely.
So that's wonderful. And today we just want to talk about raising girls in holiness as athletes.
Yes.
So how does that fit? How does that work? How can girls hold to the standard of holiness and be athletes? Because there has been in time past a controversy that a girl couldn't be an athlete and be holy.
Right.
You couldn't do both. You couldn't be a holy girl athlete. Boys could participate in athletics, but the girls couldn't, and partially because of the standard of holiness and the dressing standard and what God says about the dressing. But you've experienced this, and how many years have you worked with your girls as athletes?
Since about 2010.
2010.
Yes.
Well, about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
About 12 years. So you've got some experience in this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you have some creds.
Yes, I do.
All right. Well, very good. So how would you like to start this conversation?
So athletics for me it's natural. It was something that from my growing up, my parents supported, and coming into holiness and really dedicating my life to holiness. I was raised in holiness, but dedicating my life to holiness, I had to take a step back and look at how, if my daughters wanted to participate in athletics, how to accomplish that, mm-hmm. and not drop any of the standards that we have been taught down through the years. And so for me, it really kind of became natural to start having those conversations as soon as I noticed that there was some interest mm-hmm. from them. So it wasn't because I'm an athlete, like you said, I was an athlete and my spouse an athlete. It wasn't anything that we wanted to pressure my children into, especially my girls, knowing the standard that we had, because I knew that there would be times that it may be difficult, mm-hmm. Some of the things that they would have to face. But we had to take a step back, and I say we, my spouse and I had to take a step back and find out how to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And as we thought about what the opportunities were, together we started to build a plan for them to be able to participate in sports.
Mm-hmm. You know, because sometimes when you have an obstacle, mm-hmm. the answer is not you can't do it. You know, so that's what some people, when there's an adversity, mm-hmm. The first thing is to say that we can't do it. Actually, you don't have to altogether say that you can't do a thing.
Right.
Sometimes you just got to figure out how.
Exactly.
You know, because some things are allowable or permissible, but then you just have to look at the how.
Right.
And so you were able to overcome the barriers of not only the barriers of the standards of the schools and of the counties and of the actually secular municipalities, which they had standards.
Yes.
They have standards and they have barriers that you have to overcome. Mm-hmm. You can't, certain things aren't allowed. But then in holiness, certain things are allowed. So where is the conflict, and then how you overcome that conflict? So how do you address that?
I think the major part of it all stemmed on communication. Mm-hmm. As my girls decided to take on athletics, it was more difficult for others to understand mm-hmm. What the standards were than what we had set in place. My spouse and I had already determined how to make it work. Mm-hmm. We knew exactly what they needed to look like, and started thinking about the level of support that we had to provide to them. But it was then at the point of communicating what seemed different to everybody else, and once the ability to communicate and allow them to really kind of prove out what they could still do with holding the standards, everything kind of smoothed out and disappeared from that point. It was like, what they have on doesn't matter. They can still do just as good or even better as other individuals or other athletes. Yeah. It kind of melted into the background. It did not become an issue. In fact, we got to a point to where that difference, that one difference, became what elevated them, because they couldn't hide. Like, they looked completely different from everybody else, but they were, in many cases, outperforming the other athletes that they were competing against, and everybody knew them. Everybody.
Yeah. So the thing is, really, God has really called us to something special, and He called us to be special people.
Yes.
And we should not be ashamed of who God called us to be.
Absolutely not.
Because actually, He called us to be His children. He called us to be of a royal priesthood, which actually has standards to it for men and for women. And actually, God calls the men to be different from women. But the world says that they can be similar or the same. Right. And that's where the barriers begin to come, because as the scripture states, that women should dress modest. And sometimes the sportswear, it doesn't fit the standard of modesty. Right, it doesn't. It doesn't hide much. It doesn't leave much to the imagination, and it's not appropriate for the way of holiness. And scriptures also teach in Deuteronomy 22:5, where I know people have a controversy with it, that a woman shall not wear that which pertains to a man. Neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. And in 1 Timothy 2:9, it talks about dressing modest, wearing modest apparel. And so those are some of the barriers that you and your husband were considering as you were talking about your girls running.
Yes.
So you had to think about, well, they need a skirt.
Yes.
They need these girls, they can run, they're fast, they need a skirt.
Yes.
But now there were people who thought that the skirts would be less aerodynamic, there would be a drag, and it shouldn't be allowed, and they had to be proven. You had to prove, and one scripture says prove all things, so you had to put it to the test. So tell us about that journey.
So it started with my youngest daughter, because one of her older siblings was competing, and she knew she was fast. It was something that she wanted to walk in my footsteps. I ran track, but she wanted to walk in my footsteps. And so I told her, at first, you can't run track, but it wasn't you can't run track because of the standards. It was you're too young. Like, track's not here yet. You have to wait until middle school. Right, it's middle school before you can start running track. She's like, no, Mom, my school has it. And so we looked into it. And I said, sure. They went to practice. And one of the things that had already primed her for being able to go out and compete is physical education class. Yeah. We had to start figuring out with physical education classes, how do you still get your grades and still maintain the standard? So her track coach, or the individual that was going to be teaching track, I had to have a conversation with them. They're coming out for track. I said it was really her, but being the mom that I am, I wouldn't let my baby girl do something without her older sister. So her older
So you was providing some covering and some layer of protection for her.
Yes. So she had to be there as well. But I had to explain to him that when they come out, this is the attire. They're going to be in skirts. You don't have to worry about them. I've taught them how to be modest with their performance, but let her have her shot to see if she's good enough to run. That coach felt after practice that her and her sister were phenomenal and couldn't believe what he saw from the two of them. So from that point, it was as simple as making sure that there was documentation. So I sent a letter. I had to get in contact with my pastor and have him sign documentation that this is what our standards are,
Mm-hmm.
so that we could continue to allow her to participate. And at that point, my husband and I just made it a plan that even though they're going to be running in a different uniform, they're not going to be different, really any different from any other athlete. So we made sure that the colors of the bottom of their uniform matched up exactly to a T. My husband was so engrossed in the process. It was, as soon as they made the team, it was him going out spending hours to try to find the matching fabric. He would bring it home and I would make the skirts.
Wow.
They would go to the meets, and it was so surprising by a lot of individuals. It's like, oh, Nike makes athletic skirts. And the parents started asking, I want my daughter to have one. And I had to explain, well, I made that.
So that's
for
Karina.
them. Yeah.
That's not
I
Nike.
made that for them. Nike did not make that. I made that.
I just did it.
So even to this day, my daughter is a collegiate athlete. And I'm still making her skirts today.
Don't you see?
And the collegiate coaches will send, instead of now my husband going out to find the fabric, they send extra uniform pieces so that I can break the uniform apart and use the fabric from the uniform to build her a skirt.
There you go.
Yeah. So they started helping
build
to
the
support.
skirt. All right. Don't you see? You know, I just think about this because actually this conversation says that there's hope for the standard of holiness, in that if you're willing to commit to the standard, you can uphold it.
Yes.
You can uphold it wherever.
Right.
I just think that sometimes people just don't want the standard, because if you're willing to commit to it, you can advocate for it and you can really live out that standard in any part of your life.
I think it's easy that a lot of people feel that it's just easier to go with the grain with a lot of things. And I can't say that we went necessarily against the grain. We went against what society's norms were.
Yes.
But like you said, as we fell into the process, it just kind of opened up. It wasn't anything that we had to fight really hard on. One of the rules as athletes kind of progress up to the high school level is that if the athletes are going to be a part of a relay team, the uniforms have to look all exactly the same. And again, we had written letters every year. There was the anticipation of this additional document of the letter from the church stating what our standards were, but the coaches were fine with it. As we got to the point of the relays, the coaches made sure that even though the bottoms were skirts, and they communicated with the officials that these young ladies are going to be in skirts, the rest of the team had to follow whatever color match I created, or if the girls had to wear their shirts outside of their skirts, they would make sure that all of the other athletes, so you would see an athlete in, I would say, what others consider a traditional uniform, and here's my daughter in a skirt, and then there's someone else in a traditional uniform, and then her sister following behind in the skirt. So that didn't become an issue. The Georgia High School Association of Athletics accepted what they performed in based off of the letter and based off of their performance. There wasn't any hindrance from it. So it just seemed like everything opened up very easily. We didn't have to fight too hard. It was just a matter of going the extra mile just to do small things. I know we're talking about track and field, but my youngest also cheered. She was a cheerleader. And her cheer coach, when she tried out, came and said, she's going to make this cheer team. And I was like, okay. I mean, for me, I'm like, okay, she's going to make the cheer team. But she said, so I need to learn from you. Can she be on the cheer team? I said, she can. I said, the only thing I need to request from you is, can we make her skirt longer? And can she have a shirt on underneath her cheer top? She was the only one on the cheer squad that looked a little bit different, but we had her custom made skirt. It wasn't you know, very short. It was at the knees, like everybody else's. And we had a conversation with her. Sweetheart, when it's time for you to do your jumps and your tumbles, you can't do a whole lot of it because you need to make sure that your skirt stays appropriate. But she learned how to, even today, she's learned how to do athletics and maintain her modesty. She's a long jumper. When she hits the pit, her hands are automatically going to pull her skirt down when she's jumping into the pit. So she's learned how to modify what everyone else is doing, but she's still hitting the standards that everybody else is do, and beyond the standards for a lot of them, because of it's. I think it's just God that's helping support her.
So really, while they've had to do some modifications in their attire, which actually makes them appear different, which actually goes in line with the scriptures that you put difference between holy and unholy, clean and unclean, they've still been exceeding expectations.
Yes, they have.
In fact, they've tell about some of their success.
So both of them in their middle school terms, and still today, still holding records in the school. So that's been what, 6-7 years. Records are not broken yet for both of them.
Hey, maybe the other girls need a skirt too.
Well, I will tell you, I did have little girls that was running with them that was younger. One little girl came up to my daughter went to her mother, and her mother came to me and said, my daughter admires you so much. She's asked me if you can get her a skirt because she feels like your daughter is so fast because she runs in a skirt. So she wants a skirt because your daughter runs in a skirt. And I said, I thought that was so cute that she felt like that she was so fast and powerful because of her skirt, and not knowing that that was a very true statement, that the power that her skirt held wasn't the power for her to run fast. It was the power of her withholding the standards that have been set forth. So she did have a little bit more power on her side to do a little bit better because her skirt was there to help support because she was honoring what God wanted her to honor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree. Now, so continue telling about some of their success.
So today, as I said, my daughter Alexia is still in college running. She holds the school record.
Is she on a scholarship? Or?
She is on a scholarship. Oh yeah, she's definitely.
So that's a success, isn't it?
A huge success. Huge success for my wallet. Yes, she is still running on scholarship in the state of Kentucky. And she has a bunch of records that she's still holding right now, today, and doing really well with where she is. Like I said, high school records still haven't been broken from the both of them. And then we're looking for her to obtain a collegiate record. She is an All-American and a national champion.
Really?
With what she's doing as well.
Wow. Yes. That's excellent.
Yes.
That's excellent. And God has called us to excellence. He's called us to holiness, which is what He is.
Right. Absolutely.
And
yes,
so
sir.
when we fulfill His standard of living, I believe He's a help to us in whatever we're doing.
I agree.
And so that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, there's been some problems too.
Yes.
So can you tell us about some of the obstacles, some of the problems, or some of the downside?
So even though I say the journey seemed to open up for us quite easily, it is a hit to self-esteem a bit, especially for my daughters. As they were running, they knew they were good. Both of them knew that this was, really kind of something that wasn't quite normal. Every time we went to a different track club, they were known. A matter of fact, they thought they were twins because that's the only thing they could. The twins in the skirt. I was like, no, they're not twins. But that's how they were known. They had took on some nicknames, and it was positive, but people would call them skirts because that's how. And so we adopted that as a positive nickname. But then there were the chuckles, the laughs, the questions that did bother them, as well as me, for a period of time. And what we had to tell our daughters with that is they're going to talk. People, because you're different, but you need to embrace the difference. So people are going to talk. But the way that you kind of change their thoughts is how you perform on the track. So it's a number of times, I can't even count. It was, is that a skirt? Like, what does she have on? And my daughters heard that as they were lining up to run in their events. They didn't say very much, but then there were some times that they would turn around and say, yes, this is a skirt. You know, they would make sure they knew that they were, I acknowledge what you saw. You do see me running in a skirt.
I see it. It's a skirt.
It's after the event, the skirt didn't matter anymore. Because what that person that questioned saw was their back and their skirt tail welling in the wind because they were in front. So that kind of shut a lot of individuals from those types of questions. But there were those times that it really still mentally affected them. And so my act of support was we went on a trip out of state, and I had a shirt airbrushed with their names on it. And it was Alexia and Katera, and the image in the middle was a silhouette of a young lady running in a skirt. And I just had my girls put on there. These are my girls. So that if anyone came to question what it was, they knew who those two girls belonged to. They belonged to me. So I wanted to.
So you made a special shirt for yourself.
Yes.
To identify with your girls.
Yes.
I see.
I wanted people to know
they belong to you.
And for me, it was a sense of pride, so to speak, because it was, I'm very proud of what they're doing, but I also knew they were good. So, I mean, I knew they were good, but it was a sense of pride to be able to say, these two young ladies are doing it, and they're doing it well, off of a societal difference that you thought they couldn't do it from. So that was, I wanted to drive the attention away from them by wearing that shirt and on to me.
And put some on you.
I wanted it to come to me. If you had questions, they're with me. Come and ask me. What those?
So here's the thing. Here's the other thing about that is, you as a parent and your husband, do you see the success of your girls in the way that you supported them? Because you supported them in their dress, but I think you supported them in their performance too. And did you do some extracurricular coaching and some extra things to help them to be fast? Because it wasn't just prayer and standing the holiness. It was some hard work that went into it. And you and your husband, was there some extra things that you did to help ensure that they were fast?
Yes, we.
You know, the reason why sometimes people say, "Well, you did this on your faith." Well, faith without
works is dead.
So tell me a little bit about the work y'all put in to help them.
Yeah, seeing them and seeing their success immediately, we knew that there was going to need to be, at some point in time, their ability to improve. We started with, and he's still performing now, or he's still coaching now. They started with a very dynamic coach, but this was a youth coach, and as our daughter stepped into their high school, at middle school and high school, we knew that they would have to move away from those coaches. So what we did was, both my husband and I went to school and became certified level 1 coaches.
Really?
So that we could coach them and attend. Even with that,
So you went through some extra training?
Yes.
Just so you could do it?
To make sure that they were.
You didn't just rely on what you already knew. You went through some extra training.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And it helped so much, that it encouraged some other sisters to want to run as well. And we started, and it was only for one summer, but we started our own track club for one summer, so that the others that wanted to run, that believed the same way we believed, had somewhere comfortable to actually perform as well. So yeah, we took on the ability of coaching. And it wasn't just coaching our girls or others from our church organization. We had individuals from the outside. They made very good friends. It was always very difficult to keep our tent clear. So if anyone knows anything about summer track days are long. You are spending about 8 or 9 hours out in the sun watching a bunch of children run and compete. But we always made sure that we were prepared with food. So there was a specific diet we had them on. We made sure that we were always available to help support them on those days. So we didn't send our children to track meets. We were there to kind of help side coach for them as well. But they had such an attraction upon them. We could never keep our tent to ourselves. Someone always wanted to come and be a part, even though we were different. And I thought that was like as I thought about it, I thought it was very strange that they're not pulling away from us. People are actually drawing to us.
Yes.
and even my sons came to various meets, and it was just droves of people that wanted to just hang out with us and be around us to find out more about who we were. And they started adjusting to what we did. They weren't different. And at that point, to them, we weren't any different than anybody else.
Right. And, really, I think about the scripture in Matthew, the 5th chapter. Matthew 5:14 says, "Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." And I think that by you and your husband allowing that, even though it was an adversity to get into that, and it was going to cause a difference, I think by doing so, it's almost like the scenario here of putting your light on a candlestick.
Yes.
Rather than having it under the bed, hidden away. If you didn't do that, then people would not have known. But because you did, it became known that actually this is a standard for holiness.
Yes.
And you can accomplish by following this standard.
Yes, sir.
And it's cool.
Yes. Yes.
I think what I'm saying is, I think it's a coolness factor to it.
It is.
It's a coolness factor, and that's why they come to your tent. This is cool. These are some good people.
Yeah.
These are good people, and I think some of the outwardness attracted, but then they got to know some of what was in you.
The real people.
Something that was in you, and they was able to have conversations with you and find out, hey, these are good people.
Yes. And that's happened either team or club that they've ran with. It's, of course, with me being there and my husband being there, the parents can ask us those questions. But I think them running track, as in my girls running track, and I have to say track, cheerleading, and basketball, because my oldest daughter played basketball. And yes, I made her skirt, and she was out on the court in a basketball skirt. But with each time they encountered a new set of individuals, it allowed them to be able to share what their lifestyles were as well. And they drew in some very, very loyal friends, to the point to where if there was someone who didn't understand their lifestyle, those friends,
they speak on their behalf.
Oh yes, we had to try to keep some of them from trying to fight. It's like, no, we don't.
So no, we're nonviolent.
Yeah, we don't fight. But they were taking up for them.
Yes, I'll fight them for you.
Yeah,
you know?
You're not gonna talk about, and that's what it turned into.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. You know, there will be those people that are willing to fight your battles for you. And if we hold to God's standard, God, He's able to intervene on our behalf as well. So it's a beautiful thing, and it sounds like, you know, you've enjoyed the journey. Oh, yes. Perhaps there's been some tears. I don't know.
There's been a lot. There's been a lot of tears. Just there have been some unfairness, I think, with one opportunity where my daughter should have been making it to the state competition. She, thank goodness there were cameras out there as they're running, but they selected somebody else and said that she didn't actually make the state team. That was probably, I can't say I stepped outside of where I needed to be, but I definitely mama bear. I went a little mama bear on them.
You had to have some words, right?
I threw my purse.
You did.
And everybody laughed at that because I threw my purse and said, I got to talk to him. So I went to the coach and I told the coach, you have to go talk to the officials because there's no way you can't say that my daughter didn't get, and the only way we could tell that it was my daughter was her skirt. Yeah. Other than that skirt, she was not going to be able to make the state team. When they looked at the recording, it was the skirt crossing the line first, and they knew that it was my daughter that made the state team. So
they reversed the decision?
They reversed the decision and allowed her to participate in state. Yes.
So there you had to advocate.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So you threw your flag, the purse.
Yes, I threw my purse.
Like in another sport, when something goes awry, the ref he pulls his flag out and blows his whistle and throws it. Yes. But you threw your purse.
I threw my purse.
And then you had to go have some words.
I had words. They were holy words, but I had words. They were holy words. We had words though, but they reversed that decision. But there were, I think the toughest parts were high school with my oldest daughter, where there were self-esteem issues. And it wasn't track and field self-esteem. It was just self-esteem in general. As young ladies are running into that time period of their lives, she knew she was good. Her body had started making changes. She didn't look exactly like her sister. So as her body began to make those changes, there was a bit of insecurity within herself as to whether or not she felt that she was beautiful or could perform at the same rate that she had performed at in the past. And those were hard conversations. Those were side conversations with a lot of tears, but a lot of support as well, where that's when being a mom really had to take control and make sure that she knew how beautiful she was, as well as what type of strength she had and her abilities. I did a lot of, I guess you would say, psychological things to try to get her beyond a lot of that. She was really great, but there were times when she would not perform, or she would let her thoughts get in her head. And then it's after the fact she would come back and say, I really could have. Yeah, you can. You got to kind of step outside of that. She finally overcame that. And I think part of that was they always ran track together. So support is huge, whether it's a parent, whether it's sibling support, because like I said in the very beginning, I had them to support each other, but I knew that I was going to be there for them as well. And I think as any organization has female athletes, and that organization requires what our organization, what holiness requires, that I think the support from not just the parents, not just from the siblings, but from the congregation also helps. I have to say that the True Church of God in Christ has really supported what my daughters have been able to achieve and what they are in. Everybody is always asking questions about how well are they doing? Are they still running? They ask those questions, and that kind of support really helped keep them going because they knew that people were looking at them and kind of sort of depending upon them to see is this something that can happen? I mean, we have helped a lot of other female athletes within the church organization I've sewn skirts for them as well, and have provided skirts for those other athletes, but let them know that, hey, let me know when they're performing, send their schedule my way, and we'll go to those competitions, whatever it is, if it's cheer, if it's track, if it's tennis, if we're doing it in the like manner that our beliefs are set upon, I want to support. I want you to know that you're not there by yourself.
Yeah.
So to try to help lessen those tears, because we did face those tears, and they were hard conversations to have, but we overcome that by making sure that our daughters knew that their skirt made them powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we leaned it and depended upon, was them knowing that this difference made you extremely powerful and that they needed to walk into that.
I want to ask you a question about athletics and the things that you've done with your children. Do you feel like it has made them more prepared for life?
Yes.
For life. Mm-hmm. Because the reason why I say that is because life is full of adversity. Mm-hmm. And there's another scripture I would like to read briefly, and that's in Proverbs 24:10. It says, "If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small." When adversity comes, you shouldn't just quit and give up. And so yes, we're talking about girls in athletics and holding the standard of holiness. Yes, that's what we're talking about. But a part of that has some adversity to it.
Yes.
But life has adversity to it.
It does.
Whether you participate in athletics or whether you just living a normal life, there's going to be adversity.
Yes.
If a man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble, also known as adversity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can't just quit on stuff.
Right.
You know, some people, when adversity hits, I quit.
Yeah,
I quit. You know, but you didn't. Somehow or another, you have overcome the adversity. Mm-hmm. And in the athletics, how do you see that transferring into other parts of your girls' lives?
It's everything. I think through athletics, them having the opportunity to lose, help build character, and then them having the opportunity to be so successful and win also help to build character, because the winning, they had to learn humility behind that. And so even today, with everything that they do on my daughter's job, she has favor with, she's a manager, but she has favor because of the humility that she shows. Has she been overlooked on her job? Yes. But she didn't quit. She hasn't. I mean, and it is not about the pay. I can tell you, she's already told me that it is not about the pay, but for her, it is. This is something that I enjoy doing. So I'm not going to give up on my staff, because she, like I said, was promoted to a manager. She really wants to see her staff succeed. So I think track helped to
like
do
in
that.
the team atmosphere.
Yes.
Now you've transferred that into your work environment to say, hey, we're a team and we succeed together.
Yes.
And that's wonderful. And then I can see how that can help even in the body of Christ with that mindset. Hey, I'm a part of something.
Right.
And if I don't uphold my part and supply the part that I'm supposed to supply, just like when you're in track and field in the relay, I got to run my part of the
exactly.
and so in the success of the body, everybody has to do their part. And so in everybody doing their part, I can't quit on you.
Right. Right.
And then you can't quit on me.
Right.
Even though we have an adverse situation, I can't just say, hey, I ain't doing this no more.
Right. Right.
No, again, maybe I shouldn't do it as I have in the past. Maybe I should do it different. So maybe I should do it in a better way.
Right.
And maybe I should find that right way to do it rather than saying, I ain't doing this no more.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Because some people, when adversity comes in a situation, whatever it is, they'll just say, I ain't doing this no more. And I know I'm not using the right language, but you know,
They do.
but people, and when people get frustrated, they lose their language too.
Exactly.
They use all their diction and all the correct speaking. But yeah, people will go to that extent that I ain't doing this no more.
Right.
But you through the coaching and the training and the teaching and the example have helped them to be overcomers
Absolutely.
of adversity.
Absolutely. There have been a number of times, even on the athletics, where I would say one of my daughters, the team just wasn't, where we felt like they needed to be. Like she definitely, they hold themselves to a really high standard. So it was like, Mama, I don't think I'm running next year. I don't think because I can't deal with, there was a lot of drama. I just don't feel like dealing with all of this. But then she always came back and said, I can't. Like, I don't give up on stuff. I don't quit on things. I can't, they need me.
So you didn't talk her into it.
No.
She, within herself, came back and said, I don't quit on stuff.
Right. She had a job one summer out of college. She came home and started working the job. The job was a very toxic environment. And here I am going, having lived life through toxic work environments and things of that nature, and knowing that, okay, we've gone too far in now, you probably do need to step away. And this is me telling her, I think you might want to go ahead and, put in that letter and step away. And again, she came back and said, I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of giving up on something. I don't quit. I can't quit. We don't quit. I was like, well, sometimes there are certain things that you do have to quit, but these things that you don't quit, on things that are going to better you, things that give you more opportunity. You try your best not to quit on those things. But yeah, all of that the athletics has definitely made a big difference in how they make decisions based on their experiences.
Well, very good. So in your, they're out of the house now? Or
They could be.
Well, they're adults now.
Yes,
I'll put it like that. They're adults now. And just looking back, sometimes you do that reflection, and you reflect, and sometimes you say, well, how could I have done this different or better? Do you see any areas of opportunity where you say, well, if I had an opportunity to do a rewind with the knowledge I have now, because I say this on a side note, I would like to go back and change some stuff if I could.
Yes.
But if I had to go back and be dumb again, I don't want to go back. Just let me stay where I am.
Yes.
And ultimately, the conversation really is about, we can't go back, but we can glean from that knowledge that the knowledge that we've gained over the time to help somebody to go forward.
Yes.
So if you had an opportunity to go back, what things would you change and come forward? Or is there anything?
I mean, yes. I think our process to the success that they were able to gain, I would not change that particular process, but the part of their success, I had to, or I would have stepped back and allowed that success to be their success. There were some points in time where their comments to me was, and my husband and I try to tell them all the time, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to, like, we're kind of moving off of what you want. But we became extremely critical of their performances. And I would tell anyone that have a student athlete, and it happens to a lot of us that have been previous athletes, we start to over critique and be very critical instead of being, if I would have just stepped back and been a parent at some points in time instead of just being a coach.
So you step too much into the coach side.
Exactly.
And you, if you had an opportunity, you would be more of the parent and less of the coach. Yes.
Because, and I learned that because I wanted to make sure we maintained very good open lines of communication. And to hear them say, you never really said that it was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was always, yeah, you ran this, but I would always throw that in, or her father would always throw the but in there.
Trying to get that extra second or that extra
exactly. You
for
want
that.
them to just like you can be. And so listening as they became adults, and now listening regardless of the outcome, regardless if my girls can be last in a race.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very proud of them,
Mm-hmm.
and I support them, and I've chosen to allow them to tell me what they think should have been different in the situation, instead of me being the one to volunteer to tell them, well, you could have done this or you could have done that. You didn't come out of the blocks right, or you didn't you looked down, you didn't hold your head up, or you didn't swing your arms through. It's always something that I was being critical on and over analyzing what they were doing. Rather, now she'll come to me and say, yeah, I can see it if I just, and she's critiquing herself and bettering herself. So I think as if I had the opportunity to go back and do any pieces of that again, it would be to live in the moment of being their supportive parent and absorb those memories, because now I have memories of me telling them,
being coach.
And I want it to be like just to have had those memories of they did such a good job. And as a female, you know, we're emotional sometimes, just to be able to hug each other, be like, it was such a good job, and just, you know, go all in on that instead of, yeah, that was good, but I would love to do that again.
Yeah. And it sounds like one of the ways that would be good for parents is to allow the child to say, hey, what are your thoughts about your performance? Actually, I thought you did a good job. I love you. What do you think?
Yes.
And then allow them to analyze.
Yes.
And continue to be a love and support for your children.
Yes.
You know, I tell you, I've enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to share before we close out?
She's still competing, and we're still trying to attain more. I do ask that if anyone can throw support and thoughts and prayers as our next step, and I'm going to use the word battle, is going to be supporting her. I say her. Both of my daughters still love to compete, but I have the one that is collegiately competing right now. She's trying to make the Olympic team.
Really?
And the biggest roadblock that we may face, and God's opened doors before, I believe he's going to open doors again, is going to be still the uniform. Because the IOC requires specific uniform for every athlete for particular meets. And so that's going to be a tough roadblock, but I believe we'll get through it. I believe God has her back, and her performance is going to speak for itself. She's taken on the skirts, and that is her brand. And she wants that brand to shine, that you can do this in every way possible.
Well, if God be for you,
thank you.
Who can be against you? So I pray that God continues to bless
thank
you, your husband, your children, your daughters, that their light may continue to shine.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.